Hi and welcome everyone. This is Varleigh at Lavender Sky Panther with you on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, and it is April 5th, 2025. So I decided to do another live. This is live number 5. And I decided I was kind of feeling into if I should do another one or not, if anything wanted to really come through, or if I just kind of leave them alone. But then something was coming in strong, a message about trees. And then that was really kind of vague. So I put it out there to my greater team. Hey, what do you want to come through about trees? Is that even the right topic? Should I even do it? And then, of course, I got my little synchronicities, like a car in front of me just had one tree little decal on it. It had no information, nothing else. And it was standing right in front of me. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do something about trees. Then still that wasn't enough, for me to go on. And then suddenly kind of a stream flowed through to give me a little more guidance on what to talk about. So that turned out to be something that we're kind of weaving a little story. If you look at my very first live and moving on through now, there's kind of one little topic that we touch on in a previous show that wants to kind of present in the next show, and so on. So that little piece comes from the previous show, which was We Are Waking Up. And in that show, the live number 4, I talked about, different things are waking people up at different times, and different types of things are waking people up. And maybe multiple things over time are waking people up. And I'm talking in a spiritual sense, where you wake up and you see that the reality that you were told exists, especially in the Western world, like there's 9 to 5, you just like rotate on that cycle like a hamster on a hamster wheel. You go to work and then die, basically. That's not a happy little story or picture. So a lot of people are waking up out of that and realizing, oh crap, we're in a matrix, we're in some kind of a simulation. Something doesn't feel right or authentic anymore. Something's got to change. And that's the process of waking up to a new, better world that we know exists and that we want to get back to. So anyway, in the previous show, I did mention that for some people, okay, waking up happens in a divine way. Your whole world kind of crashes and burns in front of you. The floor goes out from under you, or it's not as extreme. Maybe you wake up one day, notice there are chemtrails in the sky, or another time, suddenly, decades later, you wake up and then you have a recall moment about having a Sasquatch experience, a Bigfoot experience, and or with ETs, or both at the same time. And so anyway, that's the thread we're going to pull and move forward with on this show, is talk about all things Sasquatch and tree people. And the title of this turns out to be Tree Family. So I was just playing around with the concept of family tree, family, and also tied into some of my previous lives. Hey, we all came from somewhere to get onto this planet. And there are some, beings that seem to be even more ancient than the human beings here. And some of those, as you'll guess, we get into Sasquatch, or also there's another type of being in indigenous cultures, which is this. I'm just using a card from an oracle deck called the Sacred Forest as an example. This one's called Wise Woman of the of the Grove. And the message here is grace. And on this card, it's showing an example in some cultures, and especially with indigenous cultures, you'll see the woman there, kind of in the distance with the tree. And so in some cultures, and if you're, onto this, you don't have to be in that culture to experience it, but there are actual tree people, not talking Sasquatch, but actual ancient wisdom type people, like illustrated in this card, who are in and among the trees and speak. That's a whole nother topic, though. I think what I want to do is just getting back to the tree family kind of concept on this particular video. It's just going back to our roots. Let me go over here, roots and trees. And isn't it funny how a lot of families, we have a quote unquote family tree depicted. I've seen some on walls where people have like an apple tree, and they have little, areas where they write down the names of the people and when they were born and when they passed. Other genealogies, and the old fashioned ones, kind of do more of like a chart, and with sticks and lines, and, just pull the names down, a little less pictorial. So we know that in like the 1500s, around there's illuminated, or 1100s plus, illuminated manuscripts and things with very beautifully decorated illumination, painted, type of family trees and origins. And then we also get into over here, and I'm going to hold up bigger examples, bigger pictures of this, where we have like the Nordic myths, and there's some kind of big family tree, massive tree that's like the origins of all of life, with these origin stories of how the earth was created, how it formed. So maybe, perhaps, and a lot of this show, what I'm going to do is just throw out things that are intended to either activate you in a good way, like you see an image and something comes to mind, or a certain word that invites you to dive into whatever path you need to continue on into all of this stuff deeper. I am going to cite, since I've been really intensively looking at the Sasquatch topic for like 3 years. I took a break for like the last year or so, but I was like in it deep because I had a recall memory come up of my own Sasquatch experience when I was 14. And as I mentioned, it kind of gets shelved. It's like an amnesia that takes place, a deliberate one, that we have these experiences. They're kind of like seeds of knowledge and wisdom that, arrived a little too early. But that are in there and in us, and then they come back, that recall moment at the precise moment, which is, for me, it was like 4 years ago. And all of a sudden, I had a vivid recall of the whole experience, and I thought, how the heck could I have forgotten that? That was so powerful, and I did remember it. Felt like I was like back in it. But for whatever reason, there was some mechanism to kind of shut that off and only release it for that recall to come back at the precise right timing, which is no coincidence that started happening, like in 2020, so 2020, just before that. So look what happened in the last 5 years, with the injections and harming the harming of people through those, and worse. And I think, I've mentioned before in another show that some of the indigenous cultures say that Bigfoot, there's going to be, which I don't prefer that term. I prefer Sasquatch. It's a Salishan language, I think, brought that forward. With the Sasquatchi, there are people. So with the Sasquatchi people, that they return. Now, that could mean like people start seeing them more out in the world, 3D world, or they can come back in the form of our recall of memories that we had that we didn't realize we had experiences with them. So anyway, they're supposed to return when there's been a massive psychic disruption to the community. And that, I will say, was all of the injections that were given to people, many against their will, against their knowledge, and so forth. That's all I'm going to say about that for right now. But that was a massive psyop on society. So it makes sense that it's the return of the Sasquatch, or they recall memories of them now, to remind us human beings that there is a vaster, more, greater world occurring in different realms, different dimensions, things happening in ways that we don't yet fully comprehend, but we are on the cusp of comprehending. And a lot of us are, as we're waking up, we are discovering these things. So we're discovering that Sasquatch isn't just, something that tromps around at zero intelligence on this earth and forests. We're discovering they're have interdimensional capabilities, can absolutely use portals, are guardians of them at times. They do telepathic communication. There's all kinds of things that, we'll just touch on a few things, through the show. And again, I'll cite references and give their YouTube channels to go further investigate and look at some really great work that other people are doing around the community that I discovered as I got activated and had the recall memories popping up. Now, they also, in addition to 3D, like, you can see the footprint in the earth type of, Bigfoot or Sasquatch. There's also the whole spiritual realm of the Sasquatchi people, and that you can even access each other in dream state, dream visitation, or, just connecting in a meditation. So there's a whole spiritual side to this as well. But let me take a few steps back. And what I wanted to do is, before I even got into this, I just wanted to set the tone with this lovely rain stick that I had picked up once, just to kind of calm the energies and ground in a bit as we get into this topic. And this is a stick, and I actually have one also behind me over here. This is a staff that happens to be walnut, and as we talk about stick people, that's another term for some Sasquatch groups. I just want to put out there that as a part of our family tree and getting into our roots and everything, like one of my previous shows, I talked about finding your star or your constellation or whatever star seems to be kind of calling to you. Could be even in meditation state that you just see a star, even if you don't know the name. This is just a reminder to maybe get in touch with what is your tree element. Like if you were to choose a tree, what seems resonant for you? On other shows too, I talked about the tree Ogham, the Celtic tree Ogham, which is the tree alphabet. So trees are in there such as ash, rowan, oak, other types. Of course, there are any number of trees, cypress, olive. Those get into also ancient Greek legends about trees. There are like 10 significant trees with all of these myth stories of the gods. And I talked about on a previous live too, that these myths, there's a lot of kernels of truth in there. They've been presented in a certain point of view, but I absolutely believe that the whole God story arc, that's ETs, a certain type of ET race. And, look at all their stories. They talk about transforming people, like, what was it? Athena was turning people into, she turned the one woman into Medusa. She turned somebody else into a spider, Arachne. So that's where we get arachnid from. Reason why I'm bringing up that whole thing about transformation is that supposedly was something that could be done in the time of Atlantis and prior. You could just will something, think of something, and transform somebody. Also, the Sasquatchi people, they can transform and they can shapeshift, if you will, into animals, into trees and other things. So I know I'm just kind of throwing a lot out, but that's my intent, is just to kind of throw some things out. I might have one thread pulling through. I might off-road it a bit, but I'll come back and tie some things together, sprinkling and dropping references along the way. Okay, so let me just set the tone before we get into more information with the rain stick, if you're not familiar with it. This has a nice sound of rain. So there's, you just have a bamboo or cactus or something hollowed out. There's a spiral network of pins or sticks in there, and then it's filled with beans or other material to make it sound like, beautiful rain falling. So I just wanted to include that too in the show. All right, so now let's get into it. I'm just not going to spend too much time on any one thing. I don't think it's going to be a very long show, but here we go. So here's side by side, and I'll again put some references in the description area after all of this later tonight. But here we have some representations, from the Nordic world of this great tree. We have a serpent at the bottom. There's an eagle at the top. There's a squirrel figure called Ratatoska, and he runs up and down delivering messages between the serpent and the eagle, but in a mischievous manner and apparently intentionally gives wrong messages and insults and all of that, and is known as kind of like the gossip figure. So there's a lot of interesting lore and again, stuff based in truth, I'm sure, surrounding this. So, as I'm not going to spend too much time on this aspect, this is one of those things I'm dropping off to pique your interest, that you can, further research if you like to get into all of this. But again, I'm just pulling it up because we've got the family tree concept, or tree, or, origin tree that, we all came from somewhere. So in this one, we've got Asgard above in the upper realms, Midgard, in the middle, and then Hell, Hel, at the bottom for the underworld. Now, I do want to point out what's interesting when you look at languages and etymologies is the Hel at the bottom. That's even current in German language. Is Hell means light, so like Hellblau is light blue, Hellgrün is light green. So what's interesting is, we've got to really kind of look at some of these things when somebody talks about a heaven and a hell. Are these just stories passed down, through various mechanisms and myths and stories, and what's the truth in them? Like I know underworld, so to speak, you get into the Far Eastern cultures, and that's, inside is inner earth. It's Agartha, it's Shambhala, and there's a whole world of riches and richness and good things. You get into other inner earth things, involving more modern stories or histories about it, and you find out that there's a North Pole, which apparently under there, is an entrance into the earth, inner earth, which there's like a benevolent people, And then you get down into Antarctica, down toward the South Pole, where there might be a more sinister, menacing force, even kind of saurian or reptoid, I don't know what, but, in a way that would match North. They always show the Nordics, in our modern cartoons and whatnot, and science fiction shows. But, you got the Nordic race, more light, fair eyes and hair and all that. And then you go down in hell, and supposedly that's a huge mystery shrouded down there in Antarctica, right? And there have been stories that have leaked out, like, oh my gosh, it's all horrific things happening down there. And again, I'm talking things are, from off-worlders, negative ET groups and stuff down in there. But anyway, we'll find out more about that whole world, I'm sure, coming up in the years to come. But anyway, back to looking at our roots, looking at the tree of life. We get into genealogy, and looking back at our roots. And then we get the actual, pictures of where we can see people, even these white bubbles with the text in it. Just imagine you fill in your names of who started your family tree line as far back as you can remember, right? And people often have them hanging in their homes. So anyway, that was just kind of a stream of thought coming through about our past and how we human beings are so connected to trees and the lore of them and the history that we even actually draw and depict family trees and put them in our homes. So we have a very strong connection to trees, as do the Sasquatchi people. Now I'm going to make a big emphasis on, yes, they are a people. Sasquatch Bigfoot is a people, which has a language, has a family life, everything. And so trying to, mainstream will falsely put in your head that they're apes, they're stupid, just putting out there. That's kind of the picture portrayed. But no, couldn't be further from the truth. So I want to show you an image. There are many types of Sasquatch, and facial features may look very different. They're very different colors. So there's white, like a beige color, black, like jet black, brown, dark brown. There's a tawny kind of brown, reddish brown. There's like an orangish red, like an orangutan color. But again, not apes. These are people, and it's not a fur, it's a hair. And I'm basing this on a lot of knowledge, not only personal encounter, but also wisdoms and everything, listening to some of these other YouTube channels, other podcasts. I've been on some, and I know the people are authentic in what they are doing and finding, and just comparing notes with people around the world and things, knowledge that's now freely given out there. We no longer have, all of this kind of knowledge suppressed by the beauty that is, love it or hate it. We've got all the censorship, which is really ridiculous, but we're still getting some truths through, thank goodness. So one of the first podcasts I want to direct you to, and I'm going to put a lot of the things that I refer to in the description area below. Again, it's going to happen far later, though, in the evening. I've got to take care of some things in between before I can update everything. But I did give my personal encounter, a main one. I've had other ones that didn't appear on the shows, but I appeared on a podcast. It was first a radio station, community radio station, and it's called Yowie Central with Sarah Bignell. She's an amazing host with that. And she had also worked with another group, AYR, Yowiehunters Witness Reports, and they have actually photo documentation in the way of FLIR, a thermal camera imaging, and it's a video that they captured a couple of Sasquatch. And then they also have a friend who captured with a still camera thermal of a Sasquatch hugging a tree and kind of blending in. Excellent documentation. Those are like the best images of the Sasquatch I've seen. I know it in my heart, in my very core, they're authentic. There's no, funny business with it. So, through and through, that's actual documentation. And then also many of us, it's, people say, oh, I believe or I don't believe in Sasquatch. Doesn't matter. It's not a belief. It's either they exist or you don't. If you've had the experience, you just know it's true. There's no belief about it. It's like saying there's grass. Okay, there's a Sasquatch. It's that simple. Okay, so anyway, I highly recommend you check out Yowie Central, and that's just audio. So you can be doing other things. You can be driving, whatever, just listening. I appear on episodes 66 and 104. And I actually joke with the host, Sarah, about being on episode 66 because I'm a Star Wars fan. And if you know that whole thing, spoiler alert, put it on mute if you don't want to know right now. But it was what? Order 66 that was perpetrated by the evil emperor to take out and wipe out all the Jedi. So I wasn't happy about being on show 66, but I want to take that 66 in numerology. That's also 6 plus 6 is 12, or 3 is a divine number. So I'm going to bring up the positive aspect of that number. Also, it is said in research by Ashiana Dean, some of these numbers are coding in for different stargates. And so it could be that the negative forces, evil forces in quotes, if you will, are trying to commandeer and, smear campaign, make those numbers a negative or seem really bad. And we want to stay away from them because in reality, when they're used in the positive aspect, they can be really amazing. So again, we kind of got to watch what we're listening to, dig in further, do some more research, feel things out. Does something, seem like it makes sense to you, feel like it makes sense to you or not? When we talk about some of these things. And don't just take history as fact. Now's the time to question everything with history, with what's going on up in the sky, with what we see with our physical eyes, and go more into the heart space and feel it out. Do you know that to be true or not? Okay. All right. So let's continue on. So I want to really emphasize the fact that it's a people. Sasquatchi people. Now, there was something floating around on the internet, and again, I feel into these things. I also use my visual eyes, my physical eyes, to see, was that CGI'd or was that manipulated? Now we've got AI kind of manipulating everything, but as of right now, you can still tell if something's been AI touched or not. Hopefully that stays that way for a while, and that we don't have where it's really a thin line where you can't tell if it's something else animated it or not. But so as far as I could tell, when these images popped up, right away, instinctively, something inside said, those are authentic. I don't need to question it. I feel it. Those are right. So apparently, I think this was in 2017 in Colorado. Again, images were kind of floating around on different YouTube channels about it. But I got to say, this is the most... I'm gonna put a link to it because when I printed this out, it's not as clear. It kind of got dark. But what happened was there was a couple, and they were in some type of simple housing in Colorado, and they said that the bottom of this windowsill is like 8 feet up, 8 feet high, and so what you're looking at here, and again I'll get a better sorry about that. I'll get a better. I'll get a link so you can see it better. But what you're seeing is the top of a nose. This is a face. This is the face of a Sasquatch. And here is the top of the nose, a very broad nose, and then the eyes. And then there's like a headband or the hair is coming across the forehead. So in one scene, the eyes are closed. And it's like, the Bigfoot came up right in the window to look because they're very curious people sometimes. And then also over here, then you just see the eyes, the two eyes, and the nose, and then the forehead with a little band going across. And so in this scene, the eyes are open. They're very dark black in this scene. And then on the other side, the eyes were closed. You see more of the face. Okay. So to me, that illustrates that, yes, the, Sasquatch, I just put Bigfoot too for reference for those of you that still have to, really would rather identify with it, with that name, is actually a person, a people. And they tend to, through some descriptions of people who see them really up close, it's, very wide mouth, wide nose. I'm going to get to referencing other channels down the line where they also have excellent documentation of this, to show that they are people. And so this whole thing about ape, throw it out the window. There are other YouTube channels I'm going to reference also that especially one, the guy is a hunter, and he reads stories of other fellow hunters and non-hunters, but anyone's in the hunting position, it's said that, time and time again in the stories that he reads. And if you found this channel, you probably know who I'm referencing. I'll give the names toward the end. But it's said time and time again, when they had a chance, they didn't know what they're looking at. They're a little bit, off-put and startled to see a Sasquatch, because some of them are smaller if it's a juvenile or a certain species or race of them or species. can be shorter, like, well, some can be like 3 feet, others can be 5 or 6 feet, others are 7, 8, 9, and then you get into a giant class where they can be 10 foot, 12 foot or more. So some of these hunters in remote areas, mostly, although they can be anywhere on the planet, they can even be in the backyard. I had an experience with that as well in a suburban neighborhood in Miami. But the point is that when they were out there, they're about to shoot because they were kind of afraid. Something just made them stop because they looked at the face and they locked face to face and they said, it's a human. I can't shoot this. It's a person. It's not an animal, right? So anyway, that's just, I wanted to touch on that. Now, when we get into what have we been raised with TV programming, okay? I've said before, I'm in my 50s, so I grew up bridging some decades here. But the first probably exposure I had to a Bigfoot or Sasquatch concept was when I didn't really think about it. I probably was like 5 in that range, 5 years old. And some of you may know this. I've referenced it on the shows, but Land of the Lost, the original one from the 70s. Okay. So I'm just putting up a little medley. I'm just trying to bring in stuff to illustrate points here. So in Land of the Lost up here, they have a family of Bigfoot. I think they call them the Pecani or something. But anyway, trying to do this. Sorry, it's always reversed. There's a little dude standing there on the edge. That's Chaka. And he was like the little kid that interacted with this lost family. They're lost in another world, dimension. A lot of truth drops in that series from the 70s. You can still find them on YouTube and that. So they interact with these Sasquatch, group of little Sasquatch. So anyway, without kind of realizing it, when I watched that show as a little one, I was just terrified of these reptile people called the Slee Stacks. They just scared the crap out of me. And they were really tall and skinny. And now that you look at it as an adult, it's funny. But as a little kid, I'm like, oh my God. They kind of just lurked around in the cave. They were very creepy. Now, there was a more evolved one of them, and that showed up in a gold tunic. He was from like the future. He was trying to come back and teach them better ways so they didn't destroy themselves and extinguish their race. But whatever. That's a whole other story. A lot of interesting truth drops in that, truth hints in that whole series. Anyway, then of course, who do we have? We have Chewbacca from Star Wars, right? And I'm just putting this here too to illustrate that we have some, smaller ones, like in the Land of the Lost. They showed kind of a shorter, variety of Sasquatchi people. And then in Star Wars, we have the much taller one. Now there's tall and lanky, like good, thin athletic build of Sasquatch. In this case, Chewie has also blue eyes. There's a whole discussion about eye color and where the origins of different Sasquatch groups come from based on their eye color. So there's golden, there's, blue would be more galactic. There's, oh my gosh, there's so many different colors. But anyway, I think there's like black, there's all kinds. Then there's also red glowing eyes. And for me, those tend to be the more aggressive or, potentially harmful ones. And those to me are ones that have some type of galactic connection or have been manipulated by a negative galactic group. I think most of the earthbound ones, who also can maybe go interdimensional and whatnot, tend to be more benevolent type. There are also plenty of stories where people are totally scared, basically, the expression, I'll just say witless, because they're getting roared at with powerful vocals. You just can't even believe the volume of them. There's a really good example on a YouTube channel I'm going to refer to also, where you can hear what I think is an authentic, experience of some campers who hear the power of the voice. It's louder than even somebody like on a microphone, and they're in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere, hearing this stuff. I had an encounter myself in northern Florida, and it was in the swamp, and it sounded like people had a full-on concert, set up with speakers, and this thing was blasting, and it was mimicking a voice. It was really creepy, and actually it was calling to a friend of mine who was trying to cross from one place to another, and it was pretty crazy, and I don't think that thing had good intentions. But anyway, we got out of that situation okay. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Sound, that they emit, that they cry out or sing. one of the first, I think, early documentations of Sasquatch using the, sounds like roaring. It's like a mix between, people say, like a lion and something else. It's just so powerful. There's no confusing it with any forest animals. And that supposedly, I think they even have like 3 different vocal cords, tremendous lung capacity. People have measured them on I think it's called spectrographs, so that you can even see what's a normal animal, and then you see, what these people can do. And then, yes, there is also even song, and there are other YouTube channels I'll reference at the end, where they've captured song and language, and them, talking to each other. And again, they don't even need vocals to talk. They can also telepathically communicate. Anyway, I know that's a lot at once, but I also want to touch back and go back to when I talked about maybe some are interfered with galactics. We get a little preview, and going back to some of our TV shows, TV programming when we're kids. This is the $6 Million Man. I'm sure some of you remember this. They're like 2 episodes, long episodes, involving Andre the Giant is portraying Bigfoot right there. And spoiler alert if you don't want to hear it, this is a little storyboard, summary that I put together, to kind of encapsulate the show, at a glance. So, we have the appearance of Bigfoot, and there are a couple of scientists, and they're measuring earthquakes along the San Andreas Fault or something. They go missing. So they call in the government agencies, bringing in, what's his name? Lee Majors portrays Steve Austin, who has become a bionic man. He had some astronaut incident, and the famous line is, "Gentlemen, we can rebuild him." And so they make him better, stronger, faster. They have all these parts and pieces. So he basically is a transhuman. But anyway, they bring him in to help solve a case. They have like a Native American consultant working in there. And of course, they see the footprint. And I'll put this as a still in the community page after the show. The Native American consultant shows that he took a plaster cast of this rather large foot. And then, the Bigfoot's running amok and causing havoc in the camp. And then Steve Austin, has an encounter with him. And he's startled because Steve is super strong, but so is this, Sasquatch. And then all of a sudden we end up looking at a community of what? Star beings, ETs, in the middle of a mountain, which I'm pretty sure they're referencing Mount Shasta. And they're observing what's going on. And they're like, oh, this human has super strength, Then that group is talking. They bring Steve in. So Steve meets these ETs, and he doesn't quite know who he's dealing with. And then one of them demonstrates with a little contraption. He turns the frequency and totally disappears. And then voila, he pops up on the other side of the room, and Steve is just totally awed. So again, that's hint dropping about technology and ways to teleport, modulating frequency. Then it's time for Steve to go. He's learned a lot from the ETs, but no, he's not allowed to remember anything. So they put this headband on him and give him some liquid drink so he forgets everything he encountered. And then they give this Bigfoot, who the ETs have engineered to make him like a bionic Bigfoot, the task of bringing Steve back out and dropping him back off in the forest. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in these episodes alone. I think these were 1972 or 74, maybe 75. But anyway, I think there's 2, if you look up the $6 Million Man, the old ones there. So again, this is stuff with purpose, programming for generations such as myself and anybody in my vintage, right? So I want to get back to, this is what they're showing us in the movies. There's no accident that something like this is shown in the 70s. Also, The Land of the Lost and Star Wars, which came out in 1977 with Chewie, right? So there's something to it. And like I started the show off talking about, a lot of us had real encounters at the time that some of this stuff was coming out, or just after. But something made us have amnesia so that we only have a recall only recently. Now, of course, some people remember all their life their encounter. But in my case, something shut it off, some power bigger than me, because I had a great memory back then. I still somewhat do, but I really had an iron trap memory back then. And for whatever reason, it was just like, it didn't even occur to me. And then something brought it up strong in the last 4 years. Okay. Anyway, I want to come back to this image again from Colorado in 2017 of the Bigfoot, or Sasquatch rather, peeking, in through the window. So the Sasquatchi people also are kind of notorious in a good way for observing. And again, I think they're not being sloppy about it or careless. They peek from behind trees, if you're in the wilds, and they kind of see what's going on. And it's not like, oops, they saw me, let me hide back. I think it's with intention that they're just there enough to see, is this person going to react badly when they see me and, freak out, or can they handle it a bit? And I'm just saying they are another form of waking people up to there's a bigger world, far vaster than what we've been told and we've been lied to about, to the extent that we've been lied to that Sasquatch don't exist. Well, of course they do. All right, so anyway, I'm going to now just reference a couple of channels that if you're interested in things, plus I'm going to talk about a few more aspects of them. And again, this is just meant to be kind of an overview and a springboard for you to check other things out further. But there's a couple of channels I want to mention. So there's, and I'll hold this up in a second, but there's Sasquatch Ontario with Mike Paterson. And actually, coincidentally, he had a live with his friend Dwayne, and they've been doing studies on this and researching and interacting with the community of Bigfoot, a family, for over 12 years. So I highly recommend that channel. He has recordings there of a Sasquatch singing, and the title of the video is Sasquatch Sings. And another really good one to give you an overview is Sasquatch Above and Beyond. So I'm going to point to that part of it, just as a visual so that you can see it. That's Sasquatch Ontario. Okay. Then another channel, which covers a lot of interesting aspects of Sasquatch, including, this is just a fragment of a huge chart of different Sasquatch types, is Barry Littleton. And here's the spelling of his name down there. And he covers topics like Sasquatch and infrasound. That's kind of a way that they project a sound that is so intense and in bass ranges that it rattles your whole chest and your whole body. It goes like right through you. Causes some people to instantaneously get nauseous or even loosen their bowels, and bladder and all that, because it's a physical sensation. Also, he's got a show up here, and I think it's something like Sasquatch and Grounding. And this is just a scene of one, that the Sasquatchi people can also crawl on all fours. Some can do like this strange kind of spider-like walk. In one of the Australian YouTube channels, the AYR Australian Yowie reports, and Yowie is the name of Bigfoot or Sasquatch in Australia. One of them anyway. There's so many names for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. But anyway, on that channel, they have an eyewitness report of somebody rounding the corner on a road driving through Australia and finding one, just laying in the middle of the road. So is it like, I know here in the Everglades, there's certain types of reptilian species. They go in the middle of the road at night and they absorb all of that heat coming up from the asphalt. So is it something where it just feels nice and soothing on the stomach to lay on the road? I don't know, just my own little theory. But anyway, the thing is that like when they get up, they have very interesting ways of moving. They're also extremely fast. Okay. Now I'm going to show one thing here. Another reference channel. So we have Sasquatch Ontario with Mike Paterson. We have Barry Littleton and his research on Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and a lot of other fascinating topics, which include UFOs, Dogman, all kinds of stuff. Then we also have what I mentioned at the beginning was Sarah Bignell at Yowie Central, but that's more audio only. And then we have Yowie Witness Reports, or AYR, if you look that up on YouTube. And again, I'll put some links down in the description area later on tonight when I can get to it to reference those. Now we also have the factsbyhowtohunt.com with Steve Isdahl. Now I'm not a fan of hunting, but I'm not judging. I'm not against people that do. Hopefully it's done in an honorable way. And I always would rather appreciate it if whatever is being hunted is at least blessed and thanked in the process. But anyway, there's one particular show, and he has so many that I didn't catch like the timestamp, like the date. So, but what I did do is in my manner of analysis, which I do with the craft above with the cloaking craft, I took some stills from video footage that he had. And what happened was he was driving, he's a hunter. He was driving along the road though, going to remote parts of Canada, like BC, British Columbia, or somewhere else in Canada. And anyway, he is huge into reading stories from people all around the world about Bigfoot. And you can tell which ones are authentic, or if any get through that weren't so authentic, but a lot of them do feel very credible. But anyway, Bigfoot is very much on his mind. He's had an experience, or many actually. But he looked off to the road, other side of the road, and he's like, wait a minute. And he pulled over fast, like he was able to really pull over quickly. And he saw what looked like the back of a bear. But the way it was kind of like, jogging up and down the road, it looked like, to me, like you just saw a split second of that part, but it kind of looked like a person running and then going down. And so this is a whole nother discussion. There's too many examples to look the other way on this, but the Sasquatchi people can absolutely shapeshift. And in this case, I did my analysis, and I'm going to try to do this again. It's like reverse in this imagery when I look at it. So forgive me if I keep starting off the wrong way right away every time when I'm trying to explain. So what was happening, let's go to the middle image. So what was happening is this is the back end of what he saw rounding the corner with a bush, kind of there. But what's happening is that already there's just a nanosecond of a frame where you could see this being was standing more upright and running like on two legs. So here's the frame where it's already starting, and I think it's a Sasquatch that started to morph into a bear. So already you see the figure bending down. But what you also see is down here, and again, you'll see it when I'll put it in the community page or somewhere where you can see it. I've already posted it before, but I'll repost it. But when you look at the limbs of where the legs should be, they're already going interdimensional. They're already kind of going invisible. And that's a part of the metamorphose, or the metamorphosis or shape-shifting. Here you can see a little better. You see outlines, traces of legs, human legs, and this thing is hunching over and turning down, sorry about this. I'm trying to see it too and show you. Okay, give me a second. So already you start to see a face over here is now like in where the butt would be. And I'll show this more clearly later, and now we have the face, and then we have arms coming down. So to me, this is the process of a human face morphing and changing in this mass. And then eventually, Steve is doing the camera work, and then the thing went around the corner, so he's tracking it, like where to go, where's this bear or whatever it is. And then later he goes to the opposite side and sees that there's an actual bear, and it turns around and looks at him and takes off. So I don't know, to me, I was studying at the time this very intently, and to me the way this, to me it was Sasquatch, or two-legged hominid, was running. It was like a jog, like not like what a bear would do, and then transformed. I think I think I caught it mid-transformation, and from going from a Sasquatch, like that's the head and the face, and again we have invisible parts here, so whatever it is something otherworldly transforming. So anyway, I think I caught that at that precise moment on that channel, from the footage from his channel. Anyway, that's that. So they do have, there's plenty of other stories about them transforming. And again, we get into the discussion. There's some that are Terra, like from Earth, and there's some that are galactic. I think, too, there's also in indigenous cultures stories of an ancient one who was reptilian, who could shapeshift to look like Sasquatch. So again, maybe some of these more negative stories are negative beings that have shapeshifted to look like a Sasquatch. That's very possible as well. And how you can tell is because it may look like a Sasquatch on the outside, but the eyes have the slits and look like a reptile. Okay, now another really great channel to go check out is Scott Carpenter, and he wrote many books and documented, his work looking at Sasquatch and a lot of other beings. And he's recently passed, unfortunately, because he was doing amazing research. And his son goes by handle T Carp. He's kind of taking over and managing the site and keeping keeping the content up, thank goodness. But what Scott would do is go on trails, trail hiking, and he would have cameras mounted forward, but also behind him. So a lot of these beings were just thinking he's, taking footage as he walks, but weren't necessarily aware of the camera behind. And he caught some amazing footage. Again, I'm going to say authentic all the way. And I just feel it and know it, you know. But one of the examples I love the most on his channel, it's still up, and I'll put the links again and below when I get to that later tonight. But what he caught was a white one, okay. Up here, this one, he was dodging behind the rock, and he has real-time footage in the video. And these beings move very fluid. So, I mean, it just very smoothly ducked down when it realized he was, you know, he was being filmed. But Scott was good at zooming in and doing some analysis himself. And so he zoomed in and he got, you know, that's the two eyes and the top of the head. And he even got a finger in, you know, in the front, one of the digits coming down over the rock he was holding on to. So when you see this in action, it really does start to make sense. And you kind of intuitively feel it. You know, this is authentic stuff. Now, another video of his I shared just the other day on my site, on my channel, actually yesterday. Sorry, I can't get over here. This is Strange Being in a Portal. And Scott had done analysis where you can just see what looks like kind of like a cave opening. And again, sorry, this is really hard for me. It's like reverse. Everything's in reverse for me to trace over it. But this thing, this opening, it's a very clear opening when you look at the actual footage. And I'm going to come in closer if I can. I got to watch this candle. There's a little being sitting in there. And it looks very much kind of like a Sasquatch build of something on its knees, or it might be some other type of entity in a portal. But when you watch the footage, it's absolutely a being, you know, sitting there watching him as he's walking away. And again, not aware that he's got a camera facing backward. So that's another channel, though I highly recommend you go take a look around. Scott was also very helpful if anybody had a problem with nuisance Sasquatchi people on their property, because there's a lot of trickster ones, prank ones that are stealing livestock and stuff, maybe for food source. And so some people, especially if you lived out like in a homestead in the outer remote reaches, and you didn't want one coming to your property, or just curious, or they bang on the house or whatever, he gave some very great tips and advice on how to handle that. One of the main things to do is, if you find yourself in that situation, is to have enough lighting up and around your, you know, perimeter of your house or your hut or your cabin or whatever. Apparently, you know, they don't want to be seen in the light. Now, some people say, oh, why don't you just catch them on cameras, you know, trail cams? Well, they see the infrared. It's like shining a bright, you know, flashlight right in your face as you come through the forest. They can see that light range. They have different eyes and they see differently. So it's like, of course, they're going to avoid those cameras, right? But some other tips to not have them come up to your house, if that's an issue, is to have a couple of cameras facing each other, you know, and put them around. Or if you're in a tent camping, do the same thing. So you kind of make a little network, you know, where they'd have to really try harder to escape getting noticed on the camera, type of thing. But even just light is a big help, supposedly. Okay. Anyway, let's see what else. Because I know I probably forgot. There's plenty of stories and a lot of different sources, different books about there being not only the Sasquatchi people, but also the Yeti, say the ones that live more in the snow, although they don't have to, but, you know, they're lighter color, that they blend in well with the winter scene. But like what Scott Carpenter captured, that was a white one, and I think that was in the forests of, forgive me, it's Tennessee or Kentucky or something. They can appear anywhere around the world, any one of the varieties. A lot of the ones I know in Australia that get reported are that kind of reddish color, like the orangutan color. But again, they're humans, human forms. Anyway, there's also some that appear, they call them, I think, the wild men. In this book from the late 1800s, the account is from then, The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. And they do talk about in the first or second volume of 6 books, but they're easy reads if you want to get into that. And yeah, there's tons of other accounts on some of the other YouTube channels I've already mentioned. So I don't see anybody in chat, and that's, like I say, that's fine. I've done enough kind of dropping here and there of information and sources to take a look at. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anybody else. Oh, the name of the man, the lead guy of the team on the Australian Yowie reports is Dean. I think it's Harrison. And again, they've got some like live footage, which is really incredible on thermal camera, and analysis is done there too. And let me just see, I'm kind of looking at some notes. Ron Moorhead was, again, started with Sierra Sounds. He also recently published a book called, let me grab it, The Quantum Bigfoot. That's what it looks like. Do you want to read about that? And I'm looking at notes to see if I left anything important out. No, I think that's enough for now. And I've covered things here and there on other shows that I've done. I've had some myself. I've had a more spiritual connection with a Yeti, and got some messages kind of coming through from that beautiful being. I've also had other messages just kind of remotely, channeled in from other beings that I can connect with and give a name to. So it's really amazing. You can be anywhere in the world and connect with these amazing beings, and they can connect with you. They can also arrive in dream state. They can also physically be in your dwelling. So that's another thing as far as protecting. If you don't want them to do that, you can just say, telepathically or out loud, no, no visiting in here, I'll see you out there type of thing. And if you don't want to have any interaction, don't want to see them, just make a clear intention. If you're going outside, hey, I know you exist, but I really don't want to see you. I'm not ready for that. And they do respect that. Okay, I think that's it. I think I'm just going to end there. If you've had any experiences and want to leave anything in the comments below, go for it. Or if you have your own channel, or maybe this is a good reason to start one. Maybe you want to tell your story if you've had any encounters with the Sasquatchi people. And otherwise, I think I'll wrap it up for now. As always, I wish everybody tremendous peace and love. Till next time. Bye.